Hi readers, it's so good to see you, and I am so glad you're here because we are reading a great book today. Today we are reading a nonfiction book called The Bicycle Book. And I chose this book because as I'm getting to know my students more and more, I'm learning that so many of them enjoy cycling and riding bikes. And so I thought this would be a really nice read aloud to learn a little bit more about bikes, which is something that they have as a hobby. So before I get started, let's make sure I have all my things I need. I've got my reader's notebook, of course, so that I can write long and keep my sticky notes in there. And my sticky notes, and something to write with. Now, when we are reading informational text, it's really important that we do something called orienting. And that means taking a look through the book and asking yourself, what is this book going to teach me? Because as we know, informational books teach us things about whatever the topic is. So we could just look at the cover. We could also go through and look at some of the pictures. And we could think, what is this book going to teach me about? You might ask, what might I learn from this book? Let's do a quick write in our reader's notebook. As you can see, I've put the title and the author at the top of my page, and I'm just going to do a quick write about what I think this book is going to teach me. So as you can see, I've written, I think this book will teach me all about the different kinds of bicycles from all over the world. And after I wrote that, it made me think of a question. So I wrote, I wonder if different countries have different kinds of bicycles. So now I've done two things. I've thought about what what the book might teach me, and I've also started asking some questions. Okay, now that we have oriented ourselves to the book, we've started our brain thinking about what we might learn, we are ready to start reading. So, The Bicycle Book by Gail Gibbons. A bicycle is a two-wheeled vehicle that gets its power when a rider pushes the pedals around in a circle. The word bicycle means two-wheel. Bi means two, and cycle means wheel or circle. I've heard that prefix before. I know some words that also start with bi, so I know that bi means two. I'm going to write that down. So I'll put my sticky note right into the book, and I'm going to write that I know that bi means two because I know some other words. So here I've identified that I know the prefix bi means two because I know the words bilingual and biweekly. Bilingual means you speak two languages, and biweekly means things happen every other week. The first idea for a bicycle was similar to this and is believed to have been drawn by the Italian artist and inventor Leonardo da Vinci about 500 years ago. His sketch looked a bit like the bicycles we see today. The first bicycle was built in France The first bicycle was built in France in about 1800. It didn't have pedals. The rider powered the hobby horse by using his feet to push along the ground in a running motion. In about 1840, the first bicycle with pedals was built. The pedals moved the rear wheels by using cranks. Next, a bicycle was invented that used pedals to power the bike by turning the front wheel. It was called the velocipede. About 1870, the high wheeler, also called the penny farthing, was built. It had a big front wheel that made it go faster. So here you can see the three things that they were talking about. This was the one with cranks, the velocipede, and the penny farthing. Then about 1880, the first bicycle that looks like the modern bike was built. It was called the safety bicycle. The wheels on this bike were about the same size. The pedals moved the rear wheel by means of sprocket wheels and a chain. You know what I'm noticing? The author has just told us that how bikes were invented, starting from the very first time bikes were ever mentioned, up until like the modern bicycle. I think I'm going to make a timeline in my reader's notebook. So I'm just going to make a simple timeline. The first date was 1500 and the last date was 1880. Then we'll go to 1800 because then in the 1800s lots of things happened. It was 1800, 1840, and 1870. I've made a mistake. So what might make more sense is if I put this as 1900 and then I can count over between 15 and 19. Now that's spaced evenly and it makes a bit more sense. We want the dates to be 1800 is when the first pedal bike, called the hobby horse, so this doesn't look the greatest, but you can clearly, not clearly, but you can see now that from the time that the first drawing of a bicycle was found to the time that the first bicycle was actually invented is quite a long time. Then from the time that the first bicycle was invented to the modern bicycle being invented, it's only about 80 years. So there's not so much of a space there. Today's bicycles are the results of many design changes. They are more sturdy, safer, and weigh less. I'm going to do a zoom in of this page so you can see all the labels on this bike. One thing we see a lot in nonfiction informational text are labels on different diagrams like this. So it's worth spending some time to look over all the different words and the parts, because just like reading sentences helps you learn things, reading each of those words and looking at what they describe is also going to teach you things. To give a bicycle its power, the rider pushes the pedals around and around. These pedals are attached to cranks that turn a sprocket wheel. The sprocket wheel is connected by the chain to a smaller sprocket wheel at the axle of the bicycle's rear wheel. As the larger sprocket wheel turns, the rear sprocket wheel turns more quickly because it is smaller. One thing we do when we read informational books is we start collecting expert words. And in the terms of bicycles, sprocket wheel is definitely an expert word, so I'm going to write it down. Okay, so this page is kind of beginning to look like a mess, but it's just my scrapbook of reading, so that's okay. So I made a box that said bicycle expert words, and I'm going to write sprocket wheels. You might choose to write the definitions next to your expert words, but I'm just not going to do that right now. All bicycles have at least 2 sprocket wheels, one at the pedals and one at the rear axle. When there are more than 2 sprocket wheels, there is a gear system. This makes pedaling easier at different times. Many bikes have a I found a word that I don't know. I'm going to use some strategies to chunk it up and sound it out to see if I can have it make sense. Here's the word, D-E-R-A-I-L-L-E-U-R. Now, I want to chunk it up so that I can try to sound it out. I see D, I see rail, and then here's R. So it might be derailer. And I also see it up here on this diagram. Here is what it's describing, the derailleur gear system, and it's actually given us a pronunciation guide. So we can say derailleur. Now I'll go back and say the sentence again and read it so that I say the word fluently. Many bikes have the derailleur gear system that moves the chain from one sprocket wheel to another. This happens when the rider moves the cable-operated gear shift. I also think that we should add that word to our expert word list. Some bikes have an internal gear system at the rear wheel axle. The gears are shifted by moving the gear shift or twisting the handlebars. I didn't know that. Turning the handlebars makes the front wheel turn. To stop, either foot brakes or hand brakes are used. The foot brake stops a bike when one of the pedals is pushed backward. Each hand brake is connected to the brake pads by a cable. When the hand lever is squeezed, the brake pads press against the rim of the wheel. So that when I read that, it makes me feel a little bit confused, but then I realize that I know exactly what this means because I've ridden a bike. So I can envision that experience of being on a bike where when you push the pedals backwards, it makes it brake. I've also had the experience of using a handbrake on a bike. So this paragraph is explaining that experience, and without me thinking about my real life connection, the words might be a little confusing. There are 5 basic kinds of bikes. First is the simple bike that has 1 speed and foot brake pedals. A touring bike is a lightweight and usually has 10 or more speeds. It is used for long bike trips and fun and for pleasure. Touring bikes have thinner tires too. A racing bike is lighter than a touring bike, and it may have many different speeds. It has very thin tires. So I'm noticing something now. They're kind of giving us a list of the different kinds of bikes. I'm going to write this down. So here I've filled up my first page of notes. So I've made a second page and I've put the title again, and I put page 2. You might notice that when we read informational books, we end up taking a lot more notes because there's so much information. So you've noticed I've used something here called the boxes and bullets note-taking strategy. I put the title of my list in the box, and then I use bullet points to make a list of the things that this list is about. So the types of bicycles, 1, there's a simple bike, and I wrote a few notes about it. There's 1 speed, foot brakes. The touring bike, it's lightweight with thin tires, and a racing bike. It's lighter and has many speeds. A mountain bicycle has a strong frame and wide tires. It is designed for trail riding in rough areas. A dirt bike is also called a BMX bike and has a small frame and small wheels. It has long handlebars and a high seat. Most only have 1 speed. They are for racing on dirt tracks and having fun. Let's add these to the list. Bicycles are used in different ways. Many are used for work. Many are used to get to work. Often, bicycles are used for fun and sports too. Bike races are exciting. These bicycles are designed to go very fast. There are road races and track races. I'm noticing that the author has given us another set of information, and that is the way that we use bikes. I'm going to add that to my notebook. So I've taken that information that I just read and I've used boxes and bullets again. In the box, I put how bikes are used, and my bullet points are they're used for work, they're used to get to work, they're just for fun, they can be for sports, and they can also be for racing. So I'll just put this right in here. It's a question, so I'll put that there. And I want to know, why is the author including this bit? Bicycle designs are always changing. New ideas for safer, more comfortable, and faster bicycles are being tried out all the time. Biking is fun. You can go almost anywhere under your own power. And the wheels go round and round. So on this page, I'll put it under the projector. I want to show you, it just has some fun facts about bikes. One early bicycle was called the Bone Shaker. It was very uncomfortable to ride. The first bicycle race champion was James Moore in 1868. He won a velocipede race in Paris, France. The Tour de France is a very famous bicycle race. It lasts for 23 days and covers about 2,200 miles all over France. Many stunts have been done on bicycles. One rider bicycled down 1,710 steps of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France. Ooh, shout out to all the France people. Lots of France facts. One of the hardest bicycle races is the Paris Cape Town Rally. The 3-week race goes through the Sahara Desert. Wow. In the United States, more than 85 million people ride bicycles. In China, more than 3 million bicycles are used. Cars are too expensive. Other kinds of bikes. A unicycle has only one wheel. A tandem bicycle is a bicycle built for 2 or more, has extra seats, pedals, and handlebars. A tricycle has 3 wheels. An exercise bicycle doesn't go anywhere. It's designed for exercise indoors. The end. As you know, after we finish a book, we have to do a few more things before we're completely done. The first is take our sticky notes out of the book. So here I've added my sticky notes to the last page of my book, to the end of this page. But we can look back and reflect on all of the different things we learned and took notes on. We can check back and say, I thought at the beginning that this book would teach me all about different kinds of bicycles from all over the world. And it didn't really teach me that. But there was some fun facts at the end of the book that had information from bikes all around the world. So I guess I was kind of right, but it had a lot more information than just this. So the next thing I need to do is go to my book list and add it to the back. I think I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. It was a really interesting book that had so much good information, and you can see by all the notes I took. Wow, I learned so much about bicycles from reading the bicycle book. And one thing I want to point out is that when I was putting information into my reader's notebook, I didn't ever copy directly from the text. I did use some single words, like if we look at the expert words or some of the information, but I didn't copy whole sentences. This is something that's really important as you read informational books. Remember that you need to put your thinking in your own words. Okay, it was fun reading with you. Until next time, happy reading.